Time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us, the Mirror's chief football writer John Cross and the Sun's football editor Charlie Wyett. Welcome to you both. Let's quickly get to the top stories, which is tonight's game, Matt. Finishing late at West Ham, losing 3-1 to Leicester. We've got the story covered in the Eye, which is fast off the press. Vardy gives Ruud lift-off. Striker sparks a debut to savour for Van Nistelrooy. But, John, is this more about another defeat for Julen Lopetegui? How do you reflect on the big story here?
Yeah, I would say, Teddy, it's going to be really difficult for him to survive this defeat. I mean, I watched it and it's hard to understand that scoreline, frankly, because 3-1 doesn't really reflect that West Ham actually played quite well, created chances, had a lot of attacking dominance, if you like, but it's another defeat. And you cannot, hide or run away from that. And Lopetegui has just not had the results. He's not had response from players. Look, he is a stellar manager. He's got a really stellar CV behind him, and that's clearly why West Ham pointed him. Against that is a pragmatist of a manager, in my view. He's not particularly, and hasn't been particularly sort of kind of attractive style of play throughout his managerial career. He gets the job done generally. I've been surprised that it hasn't worked out in the way it has, because they backed him to the hilt, the club. They've spent money, they've bought good quality players, and they're just not getting enough out of those players. A pal of mine was in the away end tonight, and I see that he was sort of posting on social media that even the away end was saying sacked in the morning. When the fans turn, when your own fans turn and lose faith, that's a really, a difficult one to come back from. And I do think Lopetegui, I would say, is really struggling to hold on to his job here.
Charlie, how do you see it in terms of the table? West Ham 14th, won 4, drawn 3, lost 7. They're not seemingly in danger of relegation, 6 points clear of the drop zone at the moment. Record night, John alluded to it there, in terms of shots in the Premier League era. Can we go by results, or do we need to look at the performance?
Well, I think the performances haven't been good enough, that's for sure, and the results haven't. As John said, they made some good signings in the summer. They've signed Kilman, paid too much money for him, but Max Kilman's a good signing. Somerville's not quite made the impression of the hopes. Wan-Bissaka's done really well for 15 million. And Nicholas Fulkrug tonight's come back from injury, obviously scored. I think he's a good signing. Again, they paid too much for him. And I think he's a bit more than a battering ram as well. So, if he can get going. But there'll be a lot of sort of fans from outside West Ham saying, "I told you so," regarding getting rid of David Moyes. I think, in many respects, they should have kept him, but equally, I think you have to respect West Ham fans, those that pay a lot of money that go every other week, and, a lot of them wanted the change. But again, as John said, I don't think they made the right change. They've got a manager who has a similar philosophy, and I certainly don't see him lasting for very much longer at the moment. If you're looking at the overall position they're in, they've got to do a lot better. So 3 or 4 really key games coming up against teams they would expect to beat. So I think the manager's future will be decided in the next fortnight, if he makes it to the weekend at all, of course.
OK, we'll watch this space regarding West Ham United and Julen Lopetegui. Let's talk about Ruud van Nistelrooy, though. I think, John, you talked about the stats there and being in West Ham's favour in a sense, but defeat. And we looked at some of the Manchester United results, and perhaps the performances weren't that convincing, but the results were good. Do you get the sense that what Sir Alex Ferguson talked about, you have to be a lucky manager? Could Ruud van Nistelrooy be one?
Well, he certainly was a little bit lucky tonight. Listen, I actually thought they were good in patches. It was what you would call a moment's performance. They were really ruthless in those key moments. Their finishing was absolutely clinical, and some fantastic goals in there. Vardy's work rate, the running off and sort of kind of creating chances for other players. Nice precision passing in the final third. And look, why did Leicester appoint him? You could argue it's because there's kind of, the way that Man United performed twice against Leicester under Van Nistelrooy's sort of kind of interim charge, really. And what is it now? I think it's 5 games as a manager across Man United and Leicester. 4 wins and 14 goals. I mean, it's not bad, is it? So, he does really attack. I think he's kind of been at pains to say, look, my first job is to tighten us up defensively. He's certainly kind of done that. But I do think he will offer a confidence and a belief in his players that one of the great Premier League strikers of all time basically is going to encourage and sort of kind of really work on the strikers and an attacking blend as well. So I do think that confidence and that self-belief from a manager has to spread across, resonate with the players. And in many regards of Leicester's performance tonight, I think the players will begin to think, you know what, we've been in trouble. We are still in trouble, but we can get out of this. I still think C. Cooper laid some decent foundations and perhaps not always getting the credit he deserved, but maybe it takes Ruud van Nistelrooy to build on those and perhaps take them forward and survive. I do think there's enough in that squad to survive. I really do.
OK, we'll see how that goes. Great start for Ruud van Nistelrooy, and fitting perhaps that Jamie Vardy, the man who broke his record of consecutive games scored in the Premier League, was the first man to score for the Foxes under Van Nistelrooy. Let's take it to the Times and a serious story that's dominated a lot of the airways over the past day or so. Gay defies FA over armband. Palace captain playing tonight risks charge for second religious message after earlier warning, while the Ipswich skipper Morsey refuses to wear rainbow for another match. Palace won the football game, but Martin Ziegler, chief sports reporter, with the lead here that Mark Gay's run the risk of a Football Association charge after appearing to ignore a reminder from the governing body about religious messages on his captain's armband. Crystal Palace, an England defender, wore a rainbow armband saying Jesus loves you during the 1-0 win away to Ipswich Town last night. How delicate a situation is this, Charlie, in terms of human rights and freedom of choice?
Yeah, it's a really delicate situation, isn't it? And I think the FA are playing a bit of a dangerous game, getting involved here. And I do have, a lot of sympathy for Mark Gay, who I think does have the right to have his own opinion. And, in terms of religious messages, as Mark's father has said today, who is a pastor, he says the FA have Abide With Me as the song at the cup final, and of course God Save the Queen as well. So I don't really think the FA should have got involved, and I think they've given themselves a difficult decision now. But equally, I think players shouldn't be forced to do something like this.
There's a lot of people writing about it, John, as well. Telegraph have the headline, Gay defies FA by wearing Jesus loves you armband. John, in a situation like this, how difficult is it for the FA to achieve consistency on all these fronts and all the individual circumstances around it?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, Teddy. I've read Ollie Brown's piece in the Telegraph, and he's really passionate and strong on it, isn't he? He calls it, sports kind of gesturing politics and double standards. He really writes a good column, in my view, Ollie, and basically really sort of kind of stands up passionately for it and sort of kind of, the almost the right to choose. I do think that, we're also overlooking here the Sam Morsey issue, the Ipswich captain, who has chosen twice now not to wear that particular armband. I have to say that one smacks to me is that basically if a club is committed, as it says in its statement, Ipswich, then maybe they should have given the armband to someone else, and basically so it is their personal choice. And I do agree with Charlie in that Mark Gay, good luck to the FA if banning for someone, for writing on Jesus loves you. And also, I do also feel that if you are imposing that directive to the players and they don't genuinely believe it, then it's a completely and utterly false campaign, in my view, a hollow one. Look, if I was a captain, if I was lucky enough to be a Premier League captain, I would wear it all day long to show a support there, because I do really feel passionately that you should support that campaign, that cause, and bring awareness. And I really feel that Rainbow Laces is something that deserves support and strength and unity. But if other captains don't, then I really feel that is their choice. The FA are completely, I think, getting, their morals crossed here, and they're trying to do the right thing. It's a Premier League campaign, of course, and I do think the Premier League, that campaign is based around diversity and inclusion. Well, for someone like Sam Morsey, if he doesn't believe in that, if you buy into it, then it's a really difficult one to justify. Really, the FA, had their own rainbow armband, didn't they, issue in Qatar, which kind of, and I actually think, well, maybe, football should have a little look and maybe consider its morals before kind of preaching to players what they must and shouldn't do. Because honestly, if a player doesn't believe in that campaign, then asking him to do it is just a completely and utterly hollow gesture. I must say again, I really feel strongly that, I do think that the armbands and the rainbow laces are a really good, strong campaign. But I do also think that asking a player, if he doesn't believe in it, to wear it and then try and threaten to punish him, I'm sorry, but that's ridiculous.
Charlie, John references the strong piece by Oliver Brown in the Telegraph, and people can read that. He does call it feeble gesture politics, the whole idea of almost enforcing it, I suppose, rather than players initiating it. Stonewall, a quote from them: when we see clubs show their support for LGBTQ plus inclusion, it helps people feel safe and welcome both on and off the pitch. It is up to individuals to choose if and how they show their support for LGBTQ plus inclusion in sport. Charlie, fundamentally, does it have to be prefaced by a bit of education with the players, and perhaps that will serve as encouragement and clear up these issues?
I don't know if the players need to be educated. I mean, as John mentioned, 2 years ago, we were in Qatar, weren't we, John? And ahead of the World Cup, all we were writing about was armbands, and it ended up what was, in many respects, a commendable stand by the FA and a few of the other countries in wanting to have the armbands ahead of playing in the Middle East. It ended up being a huge negative, and that's all we were writing about. So I think, both sides of it have to get the balance right. And I think when you've got the FA sort of, giving orders, as they basically are at the moment, I think it turns it into a negative.
Okay. Teddy, I must point out, that Stonewall comment, to me says it all. It's personal choice. I mean, that actually I think was a really strong statement, a powerful statement, and it basically says, that basically it's down to the individual and the personal choice. And to hear that, I think is actually, is a much stronger and more pertinent message than anything that sort of kind of the Premier League or the FA can say on it, to be honest.
Indeed, it feels more meaningful when we all make those gestures, don't we, out of our own convictions, I believe. Let's go to a story on a very different note. On the Times there, the back page, though, just the right-hand side of the picture of Mark Gay. Shaw suffers another injury. Paul Hurst reporting, John, that Luke Shaw's nightmare year took another turn for the worse after he revealed he sustained another injury, which is set to keep him out of action for a few weeks. Very sad for him, John. How sad is it for football fans of United and England?
Absolutely. He's such a good player. He's been such a good servant for Manchester United and indeed England. He's such a reliable, consistent player. He's top quality left back. He has filled in, more recently also as a left-sided centre-half. There's been comebacks. There's been aborted comebacks. There was all the sort of kind of the waiting game, wasn't there, over the Euros? It was such a frustrating finish to the end of last season, if you like, and Gareth Southgate gave him every single opportunity to make it, and then took him obviously to the Euros, and it's been stop-start ever since. This is a guy that is desperate to play, and I do appreciate that some Man United fans were frustrated with Shaw, weren't they, for going for the Euros rather than almost concentrating on his kind of rehab. But I think actually the two go hand in glove, and I can completely understand why Shaw was so keen to kind of get back to fitness. And there's no one more committed, I think, to kind of overcome so much injury, heartbreak that he suffered than Luke Shaw. He's a really committed, very highly professional player. And you really feel sorry for him because he's missed so much time and so many games through injury, and it's absolutely devastating. Devastating also for Man United, because now he's got a manager who would probably champion his qualities either as a left wing back, which he can definitely play, or indeed a left-sided centre-half in a back three. So it must be so frustrating for both manager and indeed player.
Seems made for 3-4-3 as well, doesn't he? The history in the recent times, Charlie. So it's a hamstring injury last season, overcome a calf injury recently. Manchester United saying it is another muscular injury, but no more detail than that. He's 29 years of age, Charlie. How, I guess, important in terms of the priorities for Ruud van Nistelrooy and maybe Thomas Tuchel as well is figuring out with the sports scientists how to get him fit for the next 2-3 years, while he's still, let's be honest, got a career in front of him.
Yeah, in terms of the hamstring, these muscle injuries, obviously that they clearly are linked, and there's been problems there for some time. And yeah, the next year, 18 months Also huge for Thomas Tuchel, as you mentioned, because he's England's best left back by a mile. He's probably best left back in Europe. But we're not seeing that, are we? And again, I understand why he rushed back for the Euros, even though United fans were frustrated. Equally, Harry Maguire injured himself trying to get back to the cup final and basically ruined his hopes of getting into the Europe. So it works both ways. But yeah, Luke Shaw, I feel really, really sorry for him because he's such a good player and United need him as well at the moment. Because I don't think the way Amorim wants to play, really, there's another player suited on the left-hand side to play there.
Yes, he's tricky with Diego Dalot, doesn't it? Not being a natural left footer. Charlie and John, thank you very much for now. We wish Luke Shaw the best, of course. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll look at more of the back pages, including this in the Metro. Arteta's title warning and City relegation jibe really is Mo joke, says Slot. Welcome back. You're watching Back Pages tonight, and welcome back to the Mirror's chief football writer, John Cross, and the Sun's football editor, Charlie Wyett. Charlie, let's come to you and your paper. Back page spread of Ruben Amorim on his haunches with his headline, Artful Dodger, Ruben at United. I won't get the time Mick got to turn it around. Mick being Mikel Arteta. This by Neil Custis on the eve of Arsenal against Manchester United. Charlie, what's the thrust of this?
Yeah, well, I think he's right. Mikel Arteta is approaching, I reckon it's probably, a couple of weeks' time, his 5th anniversary as Arsenal manager. And Amorim said he wouldn't have had that time as Manchester United manager. I mean, he's already said, I think it was in unveiling, that, it's basically he needs to prove himself in 2.5 years. And I think as manager of Manchester United, you're just not going to have that time. Arsenal's a slightly different dynamic. Initially, I don't think Arteta had quite the money to spend. Obviously, he has been helped by the board now. But Manchester United, when you spend £600 million like they have in the last season or so, that is why Ten Hag patience ran out from really, despite winning a couple of trophies. So, yeah, I think Arteta does appreciate the faith that Arsenal's board have had in him. And I think Arsenal's fans have been patient. I think they get a bit of stick sometimes. But, and the only issue is whether Arsenal's fans' patience continues, because I think a lot of supporters really felt this could be their year. I really thought Arsenal would challenge this year. And it's obviously been quite disappointing so far.
Well, John, how do you reflect on what Amorim's saying there in the Mikel Arteta era? Is it he failed to acknowledge some of the progress, or does it come down to the black and white of wins and losses?
I think I agree with Charlie, really. I do think that Amorim's probably right. He probably wouldn't get five years at United, albeit, there has been a trophy along the way, which, so I do think Arsenal probably needed a rebuild. I think you can argue that Man United did too. Arteta kind of, it took over mid-season. The first season went well. Second season, obviously not so well. And then, the start of that season, also, the following season was difficult for him. But I do think that, in the 2 seasons previous to this, I think his turnaround has been sensational. And I do think the job that he's done overall to change Arsenal and the direction the club is travelling has been terrific. Having said that, I do think that this season was the one where they were really supposed to kind of get over the line. And I do think there should be a little bit more expectation on Arteta's shoulders this season. And I do think that basically, they did spend big again in the summer. The major signing, though, was a left back. So, what was that the right solution? So I do think Arteta should be expected to win trophies, win silverware this season. And I do think anything less than that will be a disappointment, I think, for some fans, and I think perhaps even potentially the club. But I think Arteta's on the right lines. I think he's done a really terrific job, but I do think they expect more. But Amorim, there's no way that he would get that sort of time and patience, I think, at a club like Manchester United. I guess you could argue whether that's the right approach, of course, but I do like Amorim. I think he's made good signs. I think he's made a good start. I think he'll be really successful in the long run. I think he'll be a good fit.
Well, Arteta's been impressed about Manchester United, because on that note, we can go to the back page of the Metro. Arsenal second ahead of the game against Manchester United, albeit 9 points off Liverpool. But Arteta's title warning, Arsenal boss says champions can win, and United are still a threat. I mean, Charlie, Manchester United are 15 points off Liverpool. I suppose stranger things have happened in the history of the world, but he can't be serious, can he?
It's absolute nonsense from Mikel Arteta to say that Man United could challenge. There isn't a single Manchester United fan who think they've got any chance to win the Premier League title. And I think if they finish in the top four, it'd be an unbelievable achievement. I think Arteta's probably being polite. He's obviously mentioning Manchester City, and he's not ruling them out. And of course, City are going to sort it out eventually. I still think they've got too much work to do now. But Man City won't be far off. But if United get into the top four, I think the club's fans will be celebrating. But no, absolute rubbish in terms of being contenders.
Well, you never know what happens. See what happens Wednesday night. We may be eating our words later in the season. We shall see. Arsenal, Manchester United, maybe the headline of Wednesday night's games. Also, Liverpool in action away at Newcastle, John. And to the left of the page here, the back page of the Metro, City relegation jibe really is Mo joke, says Slot. Arne Slot joking that a comment from Mohamed Salah about facing Manchester City for the final time with Liverpool was because the champions could be relegated for alleged financial misconduct. Of course, charges that Manchester City deny, John. What did you make of Slot's quip? Was it just light-hearted levity, or was there a psychological blow aimed in City's direction here?
No, listening to it, I do think it was a light-hearted joke, really. And even Guardiola, I see, sort of later on, really, has accepted it as was a joke and dismissed it as a joke. So took it as such. Whether everyone at Manchester City will see it like that remains to be seen, because they're kind of, ferocious when it comes to their denials. And listen, they're absolutely adamant that they will prove their innocence. And so you'd have to respect their view on that, to say exactly that. Listen, anyone that has been an Arne Slot press conference on a regular basis, I saw him on Sunday, will know that actually probably a joke was quite a welcome thing. He's very, very straight, Teddy. So I think the fact that he's on this occasion making a little bit of a light-hearted quip is probably quite welcome, actually, and has gone down well. But honestly, on Mo Salah, they have to keep Salah, don't they? Honestly, I mean, I know there's a bit of gesturing and posturing going on right now, but I do think that surely they've got to pull out the stops and maybe keep Salah. I'm sure that Salah, by making these noises, I think is kind of pushing it on Liverpool, trying to get the deal done.
We've only got about 30 seconds, Charlie. What's you come in there?
I think Slot's comment today was really important because, as John said, his press conferences have been quite dull. And I think by saying this joke today shows you that he is feeling comfortable now in his own skin, and he has settled in, and he's obviously had a brilliant start. And, it was a bit of a joke, and we want our managers to be light-hearted sometimes, don't we? So, yeah, it was really, really welcome.
Expect them to win at Newcastle, Charlie, quickly?
Fancy draw.
Yeah? What about you, John? Hope springs eternal for a title race?
No, I fancy Liverpool to win. I fancy Liverpool will win on Wednesday. I fancy Liverpool will win on Saturday lunchtime. Sorry.
Fair enough, John.
I think they're great.
With that, you've killed our excitement, but it's been a brilliant show nonetheless. John, Charlie, thank you very much. If you missed any of the show, another chance to see back pages tonight at hour. Join us again on Wednesday. Our guests will be Henry Winter and David Ornstein, reflecting on a massive night of Premier League football.